Fragments of Redemption. Chapter 1. Shards of Resolve. Fennel Jarek stepped into the council ruins. The gravel crunching under her boots felt like the weight of her resolve, reminding her of all she had to lose. Dusk light spilled across the crumbling stones, shadows stretching like fingers grasping for forgotten memories. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant rustle of leaves, each breath a reminder of the stakes. Moments ago she had left the safety of the forest behind. Urgency pulsed in her veins. This was not merely about salvaging an artifact, it was about reclaiming her place in a world that had dismissed her for too long. Surrounded by the remnants of the past, Fennel's pulse quickened, each beat a reminder of the impending confrontation with failure. The artifact lay scattered like shards of lost hope. Fennel crouched, her fingers quivered as she brushed dust from the largest piece, its surface glimmering faintly in the dim light. Each fragment felt like it was calling to her, holding whispers of a power she desperately needed to reclaim. She picked up a smaller shard, its edges sharp enough to bite, and held it close. If only she could piece it together, show them all that she was more than a mere apprentice. A low rumble vibrated through her bones, shaking the ground beneath her. She steadied herself, willing the tremor to subside. With a deep breath, Fennel pressed the fragments together, hands steadying, purpose igniting within her. The ruins sighed around her, the air thick with tension. A flicker of hope ignited. Could this be the moment she proved herself? Her fingers moved with intention, aligning the jagged edges, but doubt clawed at her mind. What if she failed? What would that mean for her future? Panic surged as she knelt, her pulse quickening and her gaze darting. The thought echoed like a taunt, growing louder with every passing second. She needed this, needed to succeed. As she leaned closer, the ground shook violently, the ancient stones responding to her fear, a reminder of her fragile hold on hope. The connection broke. A fragment slipped from her grip, tumbling to the ground with a sickening crack. The sickening crack echoed through the ruins, a dissonant reminder of her inner turmoil. She reached out, fingers trembling, but the shards lay scattered in defiance, mocking her. In that moment the evidence of her failure loomed large, a tangible reminder of every time she had fallen short. This was proof, cruel and undeniable, that she didn't belong. Fennel lingered on the floor of the ruins, the broken pieces reflecting her fragmented sense of self. She pressed her palms against. Morning light filtered through the crumbling archways of the council ruins, illuminating Fennel Jarek's determined face as she stepped into the ancient structure. She had 3 days left to secure the artifact that could restore her place among the elite collectors. The whispers of the past echoed in her mind, each reminding her of the stakes. Her reputation and identity hung in the balance. A fleeting glance at the shattered remains of a once powerful relic sent a chill through her. If she failed now, the loss would be permanent, a burden she would carry forever. Today was the day she would reclaim her standing, or so she hoped. Fennel moved deeper into the ruins, each step sending a bolt of anticipation through her veins. The air was thick with dust, and every creak of the old stones echoed ominously in her ears, a countdown to her potential failure. The artifact was rumored to be hidden here, and with it a chance to regain her status. She had to find it before the week ended, otherwise she'd have to accept defeat and lose everything she had fought for. Just as her fingers brushed over an ornate carving, her breath caught. There it was, a hidden compartment nestled within the wall, the weight of possibility pressing against her chest. As she pried open the compartment, her fingers trembling with anticipation, a familiar voice sliced through the silence. "Fennel, how predictable to find you here, grasping at the remnants of what you once were." Mira taunted, stepping into the light, her presence as imposing as the ruins around them. Fennel's heart plummeted. Each tick of the clock echoed ominously in her ears, amplifying her dwindling chances. Mira's smirk sent waves of humiliation crashing over Fennel. "You think you can claim this artifact? You've lost everything already. Why even try?" The challenge hung heavy between them, and Fennel's resolve wavered with each word, tension crackling in the air, making it hard to breathe. "I assure you, Mira, my journey is far from over," Fennel shot back,
but as she spoke, her grip on the artifact tightened. Mira stepped closer, her words dripping with disdain. "You've been cast aside, Fennel. Embrace the truth of your insignificance." The accusation stung, twisting the knife of doubt deeper into Fennel's heart. Her hands trembled, torn between the artifact's promise and the weight of Mira's derision. She had to choose, and fast. Would she fight for the artifact or retreat and let Mira's words seal her fate? Fennel's fingers brushed against the artifact's surface, a cold reminder of what was at stake as her pulse quickened with anxiety. Mira's
Fennel Jarek sat among the wreckage of the council ruins, jagged shards of the ancient artifact biting into her palms as she gripped the stone. Dusk crept in, shadows consuming the once great hall, amplifying the weight of Mira's taunts echoing in her mind. Time slipped through her fingers like sand. If she didn't act before the week ended, she would lose everything. The collector's world was ruthless, and Fennel sensed the cold grip of failure tightening around her throat. No more hesitation. She had to reclaim her status and assert her claim, but the thought of confronting Mira filled her with dread. The stakes had never been higher. Each passing second felt like a countdown to her downfall. A chill wind swept through the ruins, making Fennel shiver as she recalled Mira's mocking laughter from their last encounter. Each breath was a struggle. Her heart raced, pounding against her ribcage. How could she face Mira again? Did she even have the power to assert herself in this cutthroat world? Doubt gnawed at her, whispering that she was never enough. Wasn't this the same fear that had kept her hidden in the shadows? The remnants of failure loomed large, and the very thought of embracing her ambition felt treacherous. Yet urgency pressed upon her. The week was slipping away, and she could not linger in indecision any longer. Glimmers of the artifact caught the fading light, reflecting her fractured confidence. Mira's voice twisted in her gut. "You're not worthy, Fennel," but clarity struck. She could either let the past chain her or claw her way back to the surface. The thought of losing her chance jolted her with adrenaline. She wouldn't allow Mira to dictate her worth anymore, but what if she failed? What if confronting her only solidified her reputation as a fool? The seconds ticked away, each one reminding her of the looming consequences. The pressure mounted unbearably. It was now or never. Fennel's breath quickened as she stood, determination igniting within her, despite the fear. She would confront Mira. She would take her place in the collector's world, no matter the cost. The remnants of the artifact felt like a chain around her neck, binding her to the past, but she couldn't afford to let it dictate her future any longer. With every ounce of courage she could muster, she took a step forward, the ruins whispering their secrets. The time for action had come, and the thought of finally standing her ground sent a thrill of excitement through her. "I'm done waiting," she whispered fiercely to herself, her resolve hardening. "I'll show them all," as she prepared to leave. The weight of her decision felt heavy yet necessary, a final push against the tide of doubt. As Fennel strode through the ruins, a new fire ignited within her, pushing aside. The council ruins loomed like a forgotten titan, its crumbled stones telling tales of a vanquished civilization. Fennel Jarek perched on a jagged remnant, her sharp green eyes tracing the dusty edges of an ancient artifact that once promised power. Dusk cast long shadows across the courtyard, wrapping her in a sense of urgency. 3 days. 3 days before she had to confront Mira and her own insecurities, or risk losing everything. Her reputation was already fraying. If she didn't act soon, it could unravel completely. The thought quickened her pulse, each beat a reminder of the stakes at hand, amplifying the tension in the air around her. Mira's laughter twisted in Fennel's mind, a knife from her past, running away already, Fennel? Those words echoed, deepening the grip of self-doubt. Inadequacy settled heavily in her chest, suffocating her. Clenching her fists, she felt the stone biting into her palms, a tangible reminder of her failures. The walls of the ruins seemed to close in around her, each crumbled stone a witness to her shame. If she didn't redefine what success meant to her, she wouldn't just lose this confrontation, she'd lose herself. 3 days, just 3 days to salvage her identity before the community turned its back on her completely. The sky deepened to a bruised purple, and failure loomed over her, a shadow that darkened her thoughts. What if she wasn't cut out to be a collector? What if Mira was right? Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, mocking her. Fennel's breath came quick and shallow, urgency clawing at her throat. She needed to confront not only Mira, but also the truth of who she was.
Could she bear to face the community with her failures hanging over her? A chilling wind swept through the ruins, rattling the remnants and sending a shiver down her spine. The air smelled of damp earth and wildflowers, heavy with the promise of an approaching storm. Whispers of judgment from the collectors danced in her ears, demanding she choose betray or be betrayed. She opened her mouth to speak her fears, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she sat in silence, the weight of indecision pressing down like a heavy blanket of doubt. But as darkness enveloped the ruins, a flicker of resolve ignited within her. She had something worth fighting for, her community. Fennel inhaled deeply, the air filling her lungs with a sense of renewal. I can't keep letting others decide my value. It's time to put those ghosts to rest, she vowed. Success was not a trophy, it was the bonds forged through struggle and resilience. Clenching her jaw, she stood, purpose flooding her veins. She would confront Mira, not out of fear, but out of a desire to reclaim her identity. With a final glance at the shadows gathering in the ruins,
the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the council ruins, where crumbling walls murmured tales of a forgotten civilization. Fennel Jarek stood at the edge of a fractured stone slab, her heart thudded wildly in her chest. Just 3 days remained until the deadline loomed, forcing her to choose between betraying her old allies or risking everything she had. The confrontation with Mira had shattered her confidence, and now, as dusk enveloped her, she paced restlessly, her fingers tugging at her hair with frustration. She had come seeking clarity about her identity as a collector, but doubt clawed at her insides. Could she redefine her worth before the week ended, before the consequences became irreversible? Each breath felt stifling, weighing her down. Fennel clenched her fists, the rough stone biting into her palms. Mira's words echoed relentlessly in her mind. "You'll always be second-rate, Fennel. You'll never collect enough to matter." The truth constricted around her throat, suffocating her with its certainty. The clock ticked steadily, each tick a reminder of her dwindling time. What if she accepted Mira's assertion? What if she remained a shadow in the world of collectors, forever haunted by her inadequacies? Fennel stepped further into the ruins, each step heavy with uncertainty. Memories of past successes flickered before her eyes, glories once held dear, now felt hollow and deceptive. She could cling to the old validations of success, but at what cost? The whispers of her peers, once encouraging, now felt like judgment. If her reputation crumbled, would anyone be left to support her? But what choice did she have? The deadline loomed, and if she didn't act, she would lose her chance to redefine herself before it was too late. A sudden rustle broke through her spiraling thoughts, and she froze. Footsteps echoed through the gathering shadows, sending a jolt through her. What if it was Mira, returning to finish what she'd started? Clenching her jaw, Fennel pressed against the cool stone, her breath shallow. Could she confront her fears, or would she retreat into the shadows? There were collectors out there, people she had avoided, fearing their judgment, but perhaps they were the very allies she needed now. The footsteps faded, leaving silence in their wake, but Fennel's resolve solidified. She would not allow Mira's words to define her. No longer would she be paralyzed by inadequacy. With the looming deadline pressing on her, she reached for her communicator, trembling yet determined. "I need to reach out to them. It's time to collaborate, not compete." The weight of her decision felt stifling, like the thick dusk air surrounding her, but Fennel felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. As she dialed, the world around her blurred, because if she didn't act now, she would lose everything. Chapter 2. Sunlight through ruins. Morning sunlight spilled over the cobblestones of the Whispering Square, illuminating the merchants setting up their stalls. The pungent smell of dried fish mingled with the sweetness of foraged berries, creating a lively atmosphere as neighbors exchanged greetings, their voices merging into a soft murmur. Fennel Jarek stepped into the square, her layered woolen cloak swaying around her like a protective shield. She paused at a vendor selling stewed roots, steam rising like whispers from a forgotten world. The chatter of the crowd made her pulse quicken, curious glances piercing her like daggers as she caught sight of her rival, a grin already forming on his lips. The weight of the day pressed heavily on her shoulders, memories of the collector's blunder still fresh in her mind. Fennel inhaled deeply, grounding herself amidst the bustling chaos. A vendor held out a bowl of steaming root stew, its hearty aroma wrapping around Fennel like a comforting embrace. She took a moment to savor the warmth, but the laughter from the crowd cut through her focus. Spotting her rival,
Merrick, she felt a surge of frustration as he gestured wildly, his voice rising above the din. Did you hear, friends? Our esteemed Fennel Jarek couldn't even secure a proper deal. His words dripped with mockery, and the crowd erupted in laughter. Fennel's shoulders drooped as she lowered her gaze, anger simmering beneath her skin. How could they turn so quickly? Fennel clenched her fists, the bowl of stew still warm in her grip. She stepped forward, intent on reclaiming the narrative, but Merrick's taunts drowned her out. Perhaps she should stick to foraging berries, at least those don't bite back. The jeers intensified, a rising tide of mockery that threatened to pull her under. She swallowed hard, the stew suddenly tasteless, and felt expectation pressed down on her like an iron weight. The gathering swayed like a field of grain before a storm, her words lost in the gusts of laughter. Desperation clawed at her throat as she raised her voice. You all know the collector's mistake was an accident. The gods themselves wouldn't punish us for a simple error. She invoked Eldrin, hoping his name would ground her amidst the chaos. But the crowd's laughter only grew, Merrick's mocking gestures pushing her further from control. She felt the walls of reputation closing in, each snicker and nail sealing her fate as she took a step back, retreating from the square as the whispers turned into a cacophony of betrayal. Fennel turned away from the square, the laughter lingering in her ears, a reminder of her isolation. The faint scent of smoked meats hung in the air, a bittersweet reminder of the community she once cherished.
The council ruins loomed before Fennel, their once majestic stone walls now fractured, sunlight spilling through the gaps like spilled gold. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, wrapped around her like a heavy cloak, mingling with whispers of the past that echoed in the rustling leaves. Cool stone met her fingertips as she pressed against a crumbling archway, its surface smooth yet mottled with patches of moss. The courtyard, bathed in morning light, offered an inviting yet suffocating stage for her redemption amidst the laughter of the crowd gathered, their faces shifting shadows under the sunlit canopy, waiting for her to reclaim her authority. Fennel stepped into the sunlight, drawing a deep breath that tasted of earth and blooming violets, but the laughter of her rival cut through the air like a sharp blade. Look at her, the fallen star trying to rise again, his voice laced with mockery, echoed off the ancient carvings, bringing forth a chorus of chuckles from the crowd. Each laugh struck her, rippling outward like a pebble tossed into a still pond, threatening to drown her resolve. The heat of embarrassment flushed her cheeks, and she sensed doubt's overwhelming tide rushing against her. Fennel raised her voice, the sound trembling slightly in the open space. I know I've faltered, but this is our moment to rise united. The first harvest is upon us, and we must embrace it. She reached out, her hands brushing against the cool, damp stone of the raised platform that had once held the council in power. Memories of unity surged within her, quickly overshadowed by the jeering of her rival, who leaned against a crumbling pillar, arms crossed, smirking. First harvest, more like first failure. His taunts sliced through her confidence, laughter from the crowd rising and falling, a relentless tide against her resolve. Beneath the sunlit canopy, vibrant wildflowers contrasted sharply with the somber mood enveloping her. The faint rustling of leaves provided a gentle reminder of nature's indifference. The scent of freshly turned earth, rich and grounding, mingled with her rising anxiety. She had to regain control, to silence the mockery echoing around her like a haunting refrain. We stand upon the very remnants of our shared history. Together we possess the strength to rebuild. She cried, desperation creeping into her voice, as the crowd's laughter ebbed and flowed. Fennel sensed the shadows lengthening around her, doubt coiling tighter around her heart. Her ally, once steadfast, now turned away, leaving her isolated amidst the crumbling grandeur of the council ruins. The echoes of the past whispered warnings. She stood alone, a solitary figure beneath the sunlit canopy, the promise of unity slipping through her fingers like sand. Time was running out, and with each passing moment, the weight of her failure pressed down. The sun hung high in the azure sky, casting sharp shadows across the cracked cobblestones of the whispering square. The air was thick with tension and anticipation, fueled by the whispers of the restless crowd. Fennel Jarek stood at the center, her heart thudded against her ribcage as she surveyed the faces before her. Today was crucial. She had to reclaim their trust and assert her authority before the week ran out. The specter of her past mistakes loomed over her, a loss she could never escape if she failed to sway them.
Time slipped away, each second echoing in her mind, amplifying the urgency of the moment. Fennel raised her hands, palms out, a gesture of calm amidst the storm of murmurs. "Esteemed members of the community, I implore you to lend me your ears." She called, her voice trembling but resolute. The crowd's attention flickered, a glimmer of hope igniting amongst the discontent. Just as she began to weave her narrative of redemption, a voice cut through the air like a knife. "You think we'll follow a failure like you?" A rival emerged from the throng, a smirk curling his lips. "What have you done that's worth believing in?" Fennel's pulse quickened, each beat a reminder of the stakes. She had mere moments to turn the tide. The crowd's whispers shifted, their support crumbling like the ruins surrounding them. "I have tirelessly devoted my efforts to the betterment of our community. This is not merely a personal endeavor, but a collective one," she shouted, desperation lacing her words. The rival pressed on, his accusations igniting the crowd's skepticism. "You've made mistakes, and we've paid for them. How can we trust you when you're more concerned with your own reputation than ours?" Panic clawed at Fennel's throat. She had to push back, to silence the doubt before it spread like wildfire. "You don't understand the sacrifices I've made." But the rival stepped closer, his voice dripping with derision. "Sacrifices or excuses, you failed us once, what's to stop you from failing again?" Each word landed like a brick, heavy and suffocating. Time slipped through her fingers, and she could almost hear the countdown in her ears. 3 days left before she would have to accept her loss. Each second felt like a lifetime, and she knew she had to act. "I possess the capability to demonstrate my worthiness to you all," she cried. But the crowd's energy shifted, a wave of doubt crashing over her. As the rival's laughter mingled with the crowd's murmurs, Fennel's thoughts crystallized. She had to regain control, to turn the tide before it was too late. A plan formed, fraught with danger. Could she risk everything to challenge him?
The sun blazed high over the whispering square, casting stark shadows on the cracked cobblestones littered with remnants of past gatherings. Crumbling stone pillars loomed overhead, the air thick with the weight of anticipation. Fennel Jarek stepped forward with a rapid heartbeat echoing in her chest, her grip tightening around the podium. Today was the day she would reclaim the crowd's respect and prove her worth amidst the chaos threatening to engulf her. Time was slipping away. She had only until the end of the week to assert her leadership before the whispers of doubt grew into a deafening roar. "I will not let this happen again," she called out desperately, her voice straining to rise above the tumult as her rival, Lysander, lingered at the edges like a wolf ready to pounce. Lysander leaned against a nearby column, arms crossed, a smirk plastered across his face. "Oh, Fennel, do you genuinely believe they will accept your proclamations given your history?" His words sliced through the air, laughter erupting from the crowd, a wave of mockery crashing against Fennel's resolve. The laughter felt like a physical blow, each chuckle a reminder of her past failures that haunted her. She inhaled sharply, the taste of defeat bitter in her mouth, but she had to push through. Time was slipping away, and the stakes had never been higher. "Listen to me," Fennel implored, desperation lacing her tone while she fought to regain their attention. "I have a plan to unite us, to secure our future." But doubt gnawed at her, the familiar spectre of failure whispering in her ear. A few in the crowd shifted, eyes darting between her and Lysander, who now openly laughed, taunting them with phrases that cut like knives. What future? One led by someone who can't even command her own audience? Each word was a stab in her gut, and adrenaline surged through her as panic echoed in her chest. The week was slipping away, and with it her chance to prove her worth. The crowd's laughter felt like a countdown, each chuckle reminding her of her dwindling time. "You think you can lead?" Lysander sneered, taking a step closer. "You're just as lost as the rest of us. Stop pretending." The crowd erupted again, and Fennel's throat tightened, her breath As dusk settled over Whispering Square, the last rays of sunlight cast a warm glow over the gathered crowd. Fennel Jarek stood before them, heart racing and palms clammy, desperate to regain their trust. The air was thick with tension, punctuated by the whispers and murmurs that rippled through the sea of faces. He could see the flicker of doubt in their eyes, a reflection of his recent blunder. Sweat beaded on his brow, and his shoulders slumped under the pressure, but he held his ground, determined to win them back. Suddenly his rival stepped forward, a smirk plastered across his face. "Look at you, Fennel. You really thought you could sway this crowd after that disaster?" The words sliced through the murmurs, drawing the crowd's attention like moths to a flame. Fennel clenched his fists, fighting the urge to retort. Instead he took a deep breath, striving to maintain composure in the face of ridicule. Every mocking laugh felt like a dagger, but he couldn't afford to show weakness. The crowd's responses were mixed. Some chuckled, while others whispered in surprise, their curiosity piqued. Fennel's mind raced as he searched for the right words to reclaim their attention. "I know I made a mistake," he began, his voice steady despite the growing pressure. "But I'm here to prove that I can learn and grow from this. Together we can achieve more than just one blunder." His words hung in the air, the tension thickening as he waited for their reaction. The rival scoffed, but Fennel pressed on, his heart pounding in his chest. Trust isn't built on perfection, but on perseverance and courage to stand back up. The crowd remained silent, weighing his plea against their doubt. Fennel could sense a shift, a flicker of understanding as some began to nod slowly. He had to hold on to that flicker, to fan it into a flame. As the dusk deepened, casting long shadows, Fennel felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps he could turn this moment around. Chapter 3. Echoes of Belonging. The sun blazed overhead in the whispering square, its rays shimmering off the vibrant tiles that formed the communal space. Fennel Jarek stood at the center, her breath mingling with the faint, smoky scent of dried fish grilling at a nearby stall. The crowd swelled, a mix of faces reflecting a tapestry of emotions, curiosity, disdain, and anger. Children darted between their parents' legs, clutching handfuls of foraged berries, their laughter contrasting sharply with the tension crackling in the air. Above, the banners of the vanished people flapped gently, whispering secrets of the past as Fennel's pulse quickened, ready to defend her name against the tide of accusations threatening to drown her. Fennel's voice trembled as she faced the crowd, her hands clenched, fingers brushing the rough wool of her layered dress. "You know me?" she called out, desperately searching the gathering for a familiar face. The elderly merchant, who had once praised her wares, now averted his gaze, lips pressed tight as the rival's laughter echoed through the square, mocking her every word. She swallowed hard, the taste of fear mingling with the remnants of the herbal tea she had sipped that morning. "These claims, they are lies." Leaning against a weathered stone wall, the rival raised a hand, fingers pointed directly at Fennel. Gasps rippled through the crowd, a breach of decorum that twisted her stomach. The elders exchanged glances, their brows furrowed in disapproval, but the rival continued, weaving tales of her past like a master craftsman. The accusations struck like a dagger, stirring memories of her childhood fears, the spirits of the vanished people, who, if disturbed, could bring ruin. Was this man's words invoking their wrath around her? The crowd began to disperse, some returning to their stalls, while others gathered closer, eager to share their opinions on the accusations. The rhythmic spin of a potter's wheel faded into the background, a reminder of the lives being crafted amidst the chaos. Fennel's voice lifted above the din, desperate to reclaim their attention. "I have worked with honor. I have shared the first catch of the season with you all." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of shared meals and trust, but laughter drowned her out once more. The mocking laughter echoed in her ears, sending a chill through her bones, the air thick with disbelief. The world shifted beneath her, memories of communal meals and shared victories now tainted by the rival's words. Alone in the crowd, the banners above fluttered, a reflection of her fading hope. With a final defiant lift of her chin, she whispered a prayer to Eldrin, the whispering shade, seeking strength in the face of despair. Would the gods protect her, or had she already lost everything? The sun blazed overhead, casting harsh light on the whispering square, a wide, cracked, cobblestone space littered with remnants of past gatherings and shadows of ancient ruins. Fennel Jarek stood before a sea of hostile faces, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Her pulse quickened, each beat a reminder of her urgency. She had to regain the crowd's support before the week ended, or risk losing everything she had fought for. The rivals' accusations echoed in her mind, sharp, painful daggers aimed at her reputation. She had to deliver a powerful rebuttal, to seize back the narrative, yet the jeers of the crowd drowned her voice. Time slipped away, each tick of the clock a reminder of her dwindling chances, and with it her opportunity to reclaim her dignity. Fennel swallowed hard, the knot in her throat tightening as she raised her hands to silence the crowd, desperation clawing at her. "Hey, just give me a second to explain." But the insults rained down, a cacophony drowning her out. A few in the audience began to chuckle, their laughter like knives turning in her gut. Sweat trickled down her back, pooling at the small of her waist. If she didn't connect with them soon, the moment would slip forever. The deadline loomed like a shadow, whispering that she must betray, or be betrayed, and the stakes had never felt higher. 3 days left, and any hope of redemption was evaporating. "You really think I'm the bad guy?" Fennel shouted, her voice cracking as she fought against the tide of hostility. "I've put my heart and soul into this place." But another wave of mocking laughter surged through the square, each taunt a reminder of her faltering status. The rival, a smirk plastered across his face, leaned closer to the crowd, his voice smooth and dripping with feigned concern. "Can you trust someone who can't even protect their own secrets?" He leaned in, eyes glittering with malice, and Fennel's heart dropped. She could feel the crowd shift, their loyalty teetering on the edge. A secret? What were they talking about? Panic clawed at her throat. Just as she began to find her footing, the rival struck with a cruel revelation, his voice slicing through the noise. Let's not forget how Fennel lost her position because of her own greed, her own betrayal. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and she froze, his words landing heavily, a crushing blow to her composure. The faces she had once known, those who had shared in her victories, now turned cold and judgmental. Fennel's pulse quickened as she sought to recover, but the damage was done. The crowd's sympathy had shifted, and her own secret, the one she had buried deep, now hung in the air like a noose, tightening around her neck. Would they believe her denials, or was the truth too heavy to bear? The time slipped away, each tick of the clock a reminder of her dwindling chances. With every second that passed, she felt the grip of despair tighten. There was no... Dusk draped the whispering square in a shroud of deepening shadows, the crumbling stone pillars standing like ancient sentinels, etched with the memories of lost voices. Fennel Jarek's heart raced, every pulse thrumming against the cobblestones beneath her feet, rough and uneven, a testament to past gatherings now faded into whispers. The air hung thick with the scent of damp earth, mingling with acrid smoke from the remnants of fires long extinguished, a bittersweet reminder of warmth turned to conflict. Murmurs ebbed and flowed through the crowd like an unseen tide, the sharp tang of anxiety electrifying the atmosphere, sending shivers along her spine. No longer a place of hope, the square felt like a cage, and the shadows danced ominously as she sought clarity amidst the chaos. Fennel gripped her cloak tighter around her shoulders, the fabric coarse and comforting against her skin as she scanned the gathering throng. Faces flickered in and out of the firelight, eyes glinting with a mix of fear and resolve, their whispers weaving an intricate tapestry of doubt and defiance. The distant shouts of rival factions punctuated the air like thunder, each proclamation a reminder of her failures, of the choices that had led her here. She swallowed hard, the metallic taste of tension coating her tongue as she considered the weight of their accusations, the spectre of betrayal looming larger than the ancient pillars around her. The cool breeze stirred, carrying with it the rustling of fabric and the crackle of dry leaves underfoot, a reminder that the crowd was alive with restless energy. Fennel's thoughts raced, a whirlwind of memories and strategies, the fire pit's flickering embers reflecting in her wide eyes, casting a glow that felt both inviting and threatening. She fought to push the past from her mind, focusing instead on the whispers of her allies, their hesitant words offering faint glimmers of hope, but as she began to piece together a plan, an unexpected chill ran down her spine, the feeling of being watched piercing through her concentration. Just then a figure emerged from the crowd, cloaked in shadows, their presence like a sudden gust of wind that swept through the square. Fennel's breath caught in her throat, the air suddenly thick and unyielding, as if the very atmosphere conspired to stifle her thoughts. The whispers fell silent, replaced by a tension so palpable, it felt as if the ground itself held its breath. She could taste the fear on her lips, a bitter reminder of what lay ahead. Who was this shadow?
What new revelations would they bring to the already charged atmosphere? Fennel stood frozen, the weight of her decisions pressing down like the encroaching darkness.
The whispering square lay sprawled before Fennel, its cracked cobblestones a patchwork of shadows and light, the midday sun struggling to penetrate the looming, crumbling pillars that surrounded her like sentinels of a forgotten age. The air thrummed with a charged energy, thick with the damp scent of earth and the acrid smoke of past fires, mingling to create a heady concoction that stung her nostrils. Distant shouts echoed off the stone, a symphony of unrest that sent shivers racing down her spine. Her heart quickened, the rough texture of the cobblestones biting into her soles as she stood rooted, feeling the weight of history in every uneven edge beneath her feet. The flickering embers of the central fire pit cast long, dancing shadows, reminding her of the fragile line she walked between hope and despair. Fennel inhaled deeply, the heavy air settling in her chest as she stepped forward, the whispers of the crowd washing over her like a cold wave. Faces turned, some lined with skepticism, others glimmering with hope, eyes narrowing as she raised her voice above the din. Each word she spoke seemed to flutter away on the wind, swallowed by the restless energy of the square. The rustling of fabric and the crackle of dry leaves underfoot amplified the tension, each sound a reminder of the fragile peace she sought to restore. Yet, as she watched the shadowy figure lurking at the edge of the gathering, a chill crept up her spine, the metallic tang of fear mixing with her determination. With every beat of her heart, Fennel felt the temperature shift, the cool breeze from the nearby ruins brushing against her skin like a ghostly caress. She fought to maintain her composure, the rough surface of a nearby pillar grounding her as she leaned against it for support. Her voice rose, trembling yet fierce, carrying the weight of her past, the air thick with the whispers of those who had come before her. The crowd remained restless, a tide of uncertainty ebbing and flowing, their murmurs a cacophony that drowned her words. In the distance a child cried, cutting through the tension like a knife, the sound piercing her heart. As she scanned the crowd, lips curling into sneers and brows furrowing in doubt, Fennel's resolve began to waver. The acrid smoke from the fire pit curled around her, a reminder of the conflict that had burned before, the remnants of barricades and signs of rebellion still littering the square. The figures in the crowd shifted, a palpable restlessness rising like heat from the cobblestones, and she felt the desperate need to confront the shadowy figure that lingered, a spectre of her past, darkening the air with unspoken threats. Her throat tightened, the taste of ash lingering as she realized she was losing them, one heartbeat at a time. With a final defiant breath, Fennel pushed away from the pillar, the rough stone scraping. The council ruins loomed, ancient stones draped in shadows, a graveyard for whispers and ambition. Fennel Jarek stood at the threshold, the embers of the crowd's judgment still sizzling in her ears. Dusk wrapped around her like a shroud, the last light of day surrendering to the encroaching night. Each breath tasted of iron and ash, a reminder of the public humiliation she had just endured. The echoes of their scorn followed her, relentless, as if the very stones absorbed her shame. A silhouette emerged from the gathering gloom, a figure cloaked in uncertainty and secrets. The air thickened, tinged with the scent of damp earth and desperation, urging her to choose, face the spectre or flee into the dark. The figure stepped closer, its features obscured by the dimming light, yet Fennel could feel the weight of its gaze. Her pulse quickened, a staccato rhythm in her ears, each beat a reminder of the precariousness of her position. Memories of past failures clawed at her mind, decisions made in haste, alliances betrayed, all leading to this moment. She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. The power she had once wielded felt like a ghost haunting her, whispering promises of reclaiming authority while the shadows danced around her, taunting her with the cost of ambition. "You think you can escape this?" The voice sliced through the stillness, low and gravelly, resonating with a familiarity that made her flinch. Fennel clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, grounding her in the present. She could retreat, fade into the obscurity she had so often sought, but the thought of abandoning her claim gnawed at her resolve. How many times had she turned her back on those who needed her? The community she had neglected now stood, a ghostly audience, waiting for her response, her choice. Would she confront the figure, risk everything for a chance at redemption, or cower beneath the weight of her failures? The figure shifted, revealing a glimmer of recognition in its stance. Fennel's breath caught. This was no stranger.
Memories surged, images of late-night discussions and shared dreams, now twisted by betrayal and secrecy. Anger surged within her, battling against the fear that threatened to swallow her whole. She stepped forward, closing the gap between them, heart racing, determination clawing its way to the surface. "What do you want from me?" The words came out sharper than she intended, an echo of her frustration with herself as much as with the figure before her. She needed answers, a way to salvage her reputation before it crumbled entirely. Silence enveloped them, thick and oppressive, as the figure's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Fennel's throat felt raw, each second stretching into eternity.
Chapter 4. Echoes of Belonging. The council ruins loomed before Fennel, crumbling stones whispering secrets of a power long lost. Dust motes danced in the shafts of early morning light, but she didn't have time to admire the beauty. The clock was ticking, and if she didn't uncover the hidden faction responsible for the artifact's destruction before the week ended, she'd lose everything: her chance to reclaim her status, her reputation, and perhaps even her dignity. Heart racing, she slipped through the shattered archway, the scent of damp earth and decay filling her lungs. Each step echoed with urgency. Every moment spent here could be the difference between salvation and ruin. Insight lay within these walls, but so too did danger. She could almost hear the countdown in her mind. 3 days left. If she failed, the past would swallow her whole. As she ventured deeper into the ruins, Fennel's breath quickened, each shallow gasp a reminder of her dwindling time. She could not shake the feeling of eyes upon her, shadows lurking just out of sight. Discarded papers fluttered underfoot, remnants of the council's decisions, but her focus was sharp. She needed the chamber, the one whispered about in hushed tones, where the loyalists kept their secrets. The faint sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, a reminder that she was not alone. Panic surged within her. If they caught her. No, she couldn't think like that. She pressed on, urgency propelling her forward. She needed that evidence. It was her only hope against the looming threat of the loyalists' power. A sudden noise, a scrape of metal against stone, made her freeze. She ducked behind a crumbling pillar, heart pounding like a war drum. Voices floated down the corridor, urgent and low. The loyalists were here, and they were searching. "We have to find her before the documents are uncovered," one of them hissed, sending a cold wave of dread washing over Fennel. She couldn't allow them to silence her. The truth had to come to light, or the council's legacy would be buried forever under their lies. In that moment, she felt the walls closing in, the air growing thick as time slipped away. She had to move. She had to find that chamber now. Finally, she spotted the entrance, a hidden door, barely visible behind the vines and rubble. Inside, she found a trove of documents, each one a thread in the tapestry of betrayal. Her fingers trembled as she sifted through them, heart racing with the thrill of discovery. But then the unmistakable sound of footsteps grew louder. Panic surged within her as she realized she had precious moments left. She had to escape with this evidence, or all would be lost. Just as she grabbed the last scroll, the door creaked open, and there they stood, the loyalists, eyes narrowed, intent on silencing her once and for all. "You shouldn't have come here, Fennel," one of them sneered, stepping closer. Their presence loomed, a wall of power ready to crush her dreams. Fennel's mind raced. She was trapped, the documents slipping from her fingers, the weight of her. The midday sun beat down on the crumbling stone of the council ruins, illuminating the intricate carvings that told stories of a time long forgotten. Fennel Jarek crouched low, her fingers brushing the damp earth as she searched for anything that might reveal the secrets hidden within the shadows. The scent of wild thyme mingled with the bitterness of foraged berries, clutched tightly in her other hand, remnants of the small meal shared earlier with the local herbalist, a reminder of the fragile alliances that still existed in this fractured world. As she swept her gaze across the desolate ruins, a feeling of unease settled in her gut, echoing the warnings of her elders. Disturbing these sacred grounds could invite the ire of the vanished people. Her heart raced, not just with fear, but with a growing determination to uncover the truth behind the chaos threatening her home. Fennel's breath caught as she uncovered a tattered document lodged between two stones, its edges frayed and damp. She glanced around, her senses heightened, aware of the whispers of the wind through the ruins. The herbalist's voice echoed in her mind, warning her against breaking any taboos here. Yet the urgency of the situation outweighed her caution. She unfolded the paper, revealing the faction's insidious plans to exploit the power vacuum left by the leader's death. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the thrill of knowing that she held the key to uncovering their manipulation. The bitter taste of the berries lingered on her tongue,
a stark reminder of her small meal and the stark contrast of her humble existence to those scheming in the shadows. A sudden noise snapped her back to the present, a rustle among the ruins. Fennel froze, heart racing as she spotted a pair of figures clad in rough-spun wool making their way toward her. They were laborers, their faces weathered and lined with the hardships of life. Without thinking, she lowered her head slightly in respect, remembering the social rules that dictated how to address those who toiled in the community. They paused, glancing at her with curiosity, but continued on their path, oblivious to the secret she now held. As the sun climbed higher, shadows lengthened across the ground, merging with the stories etched into the stone. Fennel's mind raced with the implications of the document. The faction's plan was not just a threat, it was a challenge to everything she had ever known. She tucked the paper into her cloak, feeling its weight, and whispered a silent prayer to Eldrin, the whispering shade, for guidance. The air crackled with tension, as if even the spirits were aware of her resolve to confront the darkness looming over her community. She remembered the first catch of the season, the communal stew that had brought everyone together, an image of hope.
The whispering square stretched before Fennel, a cracked expanse of cobblestones littered with the remnants of past gatherings. The early morning light filtered through the crumbling stone pillars, casting long shadows that danced across the uneven ground. A chill breeze carried the heavy scent of damp earth, mingling with the acrid remnants of past fires, stirring up memories of warmth and conflict. Fennel felt the texture of the cobblestones beneath her worn boots, each uneven edge a reminder of struggles past. Whispers and murmurs filled the air, thick with anticipation, as townspeople shifted nervously, their fabric rustling like the wings of caged birds. The distant shouts of children playing mingled with the crackle of dry leaves underfoot, a stark contrast to the tension that hung like a storm cloud above them. Fennel stepped forward, her heart racing as the crowd's murmurs grew louder, a tidal wave of uncertainty crashing around her. She raised her hands, palms open, feeling the cool breeze brush against her skin, a refreshing contrast to the heat radiating from the central fire pit. "Listen to me," she shouted, her voice slicing through the anxious whispers like a knife. "We cannot stand idly by while the faction manipulates us. We must unite." The flickering shadows cast by the fire danced around her, as if echoing her fervor, yet the faces before her remained a mix of fear and loyalty to the old regime, their eyes glistening with doubt and trepidation. As she spoke, Fennel caught the scent of something sweet lingering in the air, a faint reminder of the ripe berries she had shared earlier. It twisted in her stomach, a bitter reminder of the stakes at play. The cobblestones felt rough beneath her feet, grounding her even as her heart fluttered like a trapped bird. She locked eyes with a man in the crowd, his brow furrowed, lips pressed tight, a loyalist. Her voice wavered only slightly as she pressed on. "Remember the stories of our ancestors, the murals that tell of resistance. If we do not stand together, we risk losing everything." The echoes of her words bounced off the stone pillars, a haunting reminder of the weight of history, the ghosts of those who had come before, urging them toward action. A ripple of murmurs coursed through the crowd, some shifting closer, others pulling away. Fennel's stomach knotted as she sensed the split. The air buzzed with the electric tension of a crowd, poised on the edge of violence, making her heart race. She could hear the distant sounds of the wind whistling through the pillars, creating an eerie melody that seemed to underscore the urgency of her message. "We've seen what happens when we remain silent," she continued, her voice rising, the taste of copper in her mouth as Scene 4. As Fennel stands in the whispering square, he feels the weight of the crowd's divided opinions. He reflects on the need for unity and the danger posed by the loyalists. In his heart, he grapples with whether to confront the crowd again or retreat in fear, ultimately deciding to speak from a place of vulnerability, sharing his own fears and hopes for a united future. The whispering square thrummed with an anxious energy, flickering shadows dancing beneath the glow of the torches. Fennel Jarek stood at the center, her breath misting in the chilly night air, the scent of stewed roots and smoked meat wafting from nearby stalls, mingling with the distant notes of herbal tea. The crowd, clad in layered wool and animal hides, shifted uneasily, their muted earth tones contrasting sharply with a few vibrant patches of embroidered fabric worn by the wealthier class. As she raised her hands, the firelight caught the brass bracelet on her wrist, a token from her mother's family, grounding her in the weight of their shared lineage and the urgency of their plight. Fennel's voice rose, fierce and steady. They hide among us, those who would manipulate our fears, wielding the power of the artifact for their own gain. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of disbelief and fear. She caught the glance of an older woman, her lined face shadowed in doubt, lips pressed together as if holding back a lifetime of grievances. Fennel swallowed hard, the taste of dried fish from earlier that evening still lingering, reminding her of shared meals and trust. "We must reclaim it for the sake of our families and our future." From the rear, a man stepped forward, hands shoved deep in his pockets, his woolen cloak frayed at the edges. "But who do we trust? Last time we were betrayed by our own." His voice cut through the gloom like a blade, and a collective gasp echoed through the square. Fennel's heart raced. She felt the weight of past betrayals hanging in the air like a broken mirror, the shards of mistrust glinting dangerously. The crowd began to shift, some glancing toward the alleys, the shadows whispering of retreat. "We all have lost, but we must not let fear bind us." Fennel pressed on, her hands clenched. She recited the words of Eldron, a prayer she had murmured since childhood, hoping to inspire courage. "May the whispering shade guide us through this darkness." A few heads bowed, and she caught a glimpse of a young boy clutching a small trinket, a relic from the swamp, a blessing or a curse, depending on the moon. His eyes shone with hope, but around them uncertainty flickered. "If we do not act, we risk losing everything." As she spoke, Fennel noticed a group of fishermen in the back, their faces hardened by the sea's brine, exchanging glances that spoke of unspoken alliances and whispered secrets. They had always been the first to stand against the tides, yet here they hesitated, the weight of the past pressing down like the cool night air. "Remember the first catch of the season," she called out, invoking the ritual of gratitude, the shared meal that had once united them. "We shared our bounty, our victories, our losses. Let us..." Chapter 5. Shadows of Resolve. Dusk settled over the whispering square, casting long shadows that danced among the crumbling stone pillars. The air buzzed with a tension that crackled like dry leaves underfoot, melding the scents of damp earth and residual smoke from the central fire pit. Fennel Jarek stood at the heart of the square, the rough cobblestones beneath her boots feeling like the pulse of a restless crowd, each uneven edge a reminder of the turmoil that had haunted this place. Murmurs swirled like ghosts, whispering fears that mingled with the faint metallic tang of uncertainty, creating a thick atmosphere where hope and despair wrestled for dominance. Fennel lifted her chin, her heart drumming in rhythm with the unease that hung in the air. The flickering embers of the fire pit cast a warm glow against her skin, a stark contrast to the cool breeze that rustled her dark cloak. She scanned the crowd, faces illuminated by shadows, each one etched with doubt and fear. The remnants of past gatherings littered the square, a silent testament to the struggles of her people, and in that moment she felt the weight of their history upon her shoulders. "Stand with me," she implored, her voice striving to pierce through the murmurings. "Or let the shadows consume us." The murmurs intensified, a wave of anxiety crashing against her words. Fennel's stomach twisted, not just from the fear of failure, but from the sharp, acrid scent of the past fires that clung to the air, mingling with the dampness of the cobblestones. The square felt alive, the echoes of ancient voices whispering warnings in the wind, urging her to see the truth lurking just beyond the flickering light. A chill crept up her spine as she caught sight of a figure cloaked in shadows, watching her from the edge of the square. Her heart raced, each beat a reminder of the precariousness of her position. Just as the first stars broke through the shroud of twilight, that figure stepped forward, their silhouette sharp against the dimming light. Fennel's breath caught, a metallic taste flooding her mouth, mingling with the heaviness of betrayal that hung palpably in the air. "You think they will rally behind you?" The figure called, their voice slicing through the murmurs like a knife. "They will remember the truth, Fennel? You have led them to ruin?" The crowd stilled, the electric tension shifting into a suffocating silence, each person caught between the weight of loyalty and the haunting spectre of doubt. With her heart pounding, Fennel fought to maintain her composure, the coolness of the cobblestones grounding her as memories of her failures washed over her. The square felt like a living entity, its ancient stones absorbing the fear and anger swirling around her.
She could almost hear the whispers of those who had fought and fallen before her, urging her to stand tall. "I will not falter," she shouted, her voice rising defiantly against the despair. "We are stronger together, and together we can reclaim—"
The sun hung high over the whispering square, casting sharp shadows on the cobblestones worn smooth by countless footsteps. Merchants shouted over one another, hawking their wares, dried fish glistening under the midday sun, and baskets brimming with foraged berries. The rich aroma of stewed roots wafted from a nearby stall, mingling with the scent of herbal tea brewed fresh fennel. Jarek stood at the center of the square, her heart racing as she scanned the crowd, searching for a flicker of trust among the wary faces. She wrapped her fingers around the rough wool of her layered tunic, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. Today she would reclaim their faith or risk losing everything. Fennel stepped forward, raising her voice above the din. "We cannot let them tear us apart with lies. Our unity is our strength." She gestured emphatically, her hand slicing through the air, but a chill settled over the crowd. The whispers of the rival factions stirred like leaves in the wind, casting shadows of doubt. As she continued, her eyes caught the movement of a familiar figure. Garin, the leader of the rival faction, pushed through the throng, a smug smile plastered across his face. He met her gaze, and in that moment the air thickened with tension. The murmurs grew, suspicion curling like smoke around them. "Look at her!" Garin called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "A desperate woman clinging to a dying dream. What has she ever done for us?" The crowd shifted, a wave of anxiety rippling through them. Fennel's heart sank. They were hungry for hope, but Garin was feeding them fear. She could see the hardened faces of the laborers, their hands calloused from toil, now twisted into frowns of discontent. Her thoughts raced. How could she turn this tide? "You think unity will save us?" Garin continued, his tone more menacing now. "The spirits of the vanished watch us, and they whisper of betrayal. Are we to trust someone who has failed us before?" The crowd hesitated, eyes darting from Fennel to Garin, as if searching for a sign from the gods. She could feel the weight of her own lineage pressing down on her, the whispers of her ancestors mingling with the tension in the air. She took a breath, summoning every ounce of courage. "I swear by Eldron, the whispering shade, I will not abandon you." The murmurs grew louder, the crowd swaying like a field of grass caught in a storm. Fennel pressed on, but her voice faltered as a young boy, clutching a piece of dried fish, shouted, "You're lying, you're just like the others." The accusation hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving. In that moment chaos erupted. A woman screamed, and the crowd surged forward, faces twisted in anger and fear. Fennel. The echoes of the whispering square receded with each step Fennel took, but the weight of betrayal clung to her like the damp chill of dusk. Shadows pooled in the council ruins, remnants of ancient stones jutting toward the bruised sky, crumbling under the burden of history. She paused, inhaling the scent of decay and moss that clung to the air, grounding herself amid the chaos swirling in her mind. What had once been a place of unity now loomed as a hollow reminder of her faltering vision. The spirits of the past whispered through the cracks in the stone, a chorus of doubts that mirrored her own. Would they condemn her for her failure? Would they watch as she slipped further into despair? Fennel's fingers traced the jagged edges of a fallen stone, cold and unyielding under her touch. Each scarred surface spoke of decisions made, alliances formed in the shadows of the council, and the price of hope. She pressed her forehead against the cool stone, the roughness grounding her. In that moment, isolation wrapped around her like a shroud. No one understood the weight she carried, the burden of leadership, the fear of losing everything. A flicker of guilt ignited within her. She had shut out those who might help, who might stand beside her, but was it too late? Could she bridge the chasm created by mistrust? The twilight deepened, and shadows stretched like fingers across the ruins, grasping at her resolve. Fennel straightened, her heart thrumming beneath her ribcage. She had to act, but the faces from the square haunted her, a phantasmagoria of disbelief and scorn. What if they were right to doubt her? What if she was merely a fallen leader, a whisper lost among the cries for change? She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms, fear coiled within her, a serpent ready to strike. Yet in the depths of that uncertainty, the spark of defiance ignited. She had not come this far to retreat into obscurity. A gust of wind swept through the ruins, rustling the leaves overhead, and Fennel shivered as a memory surfaced, her mother's voice, strong and unwavering, urging her to stand firm against the tide.
Why did she hesitate? The very people she had once deemed untrustworthy were now the key to her survival. Collaboration could be her salvation, a lifeline thrown in a storm-tossed sea. But how could she reach out after the chaos? The fear of rejection gnawed at her. Would they welcome her back, or were the wounds too deep? As dusk surrendered tonight, Fennel took a step away from the stone. The council ruins loomed behind her, a ghost of what could have been, yet within her a new resolve stirred. She would choose to fight, not in isolation, but among the very people who had once turned away. The question lingered in the air, heavy and palpable. Was it possible to rebuild trust from the ashes of betrayal? With a breath that tasted of determination.
Dusk draped over the council ruins like a shroud, the air thick with tension as Fennel Jarek positioned herself before her remaining supporters. Shadows flickered on the crumbling stone, mirroring the flicker of hope she fought to ignite. We need to unite. If we don't act now, the smear campaign will swallow us whole before the week ends. Her voice trembled slightly, but she pushed through, the urgency clawing at her chest. Time was not on their side. Every second lost was a step closer to permanent disgrace. Their eyes, once filled with trust, now reflected doubt, and she needed to change that fast. Fennel scanned the faces of her allies, the dim light revealing the worry etched into their features. "We can't let them define us," she urged, stepping forward, desperation creeping into her tone. "If we fight back now, we can counter their lies with the truth." The silence that followed felt like a lead weight pressing against her heart. The clock was ticking, each second a reminder that they were running out of time. She could almost hear it, an ominous beat counting down to their doom. A murmur broke the stillness, one voice rising above the rest. "But what if we fail, Fennel? What if it only makes things worse?" It was Arlen, once a steadfast ally, now a spectre of fear. Fennel felt her stomach drop. Doubt had seeped into their ranks, and as Arlen's words hung in the air, the reality of their situation solidified. The council had crumbled, and she was left holding the pieces, too few to make a difference. Could she really rally these people in time? "We have no choice." Fennel shot back, her pulse racing. "Before the week ends we must act. If we don't, we'll be accepting our defeat." The words tumbled out, raw and urgent, but as Fennel looked into their eyes she saw not just fear, but a flicker of something darker, betrayal perhaps, or was it mere exhaustion? Her heart sank further as their expressions turned from uncertainty to despair, the weight of possibility pressing down on her like a storm cloud, ready to burst. Just as she thought she might break through, Arlen's voice sliced through the tension again. "I can't do this anymore, Fennel. I want out. This isn't worth it." The words hit her like a physical blow, her heart racing as the ground shifted beneath her. She felt the room closing in, every breath a reminder of her isolation. The clock was not just ticking, it was screaming at her, the finality of their situation crashing over her like a wave. "No, we have to stand together," she pleaded, desperation clawing at her throat. But as she spoke, she felt the last of their resolve slipping away. Would she be left to fight this battle alone? The council ruins loomed around Fennel, shadows stretching like fingers across the cracked stone. Arlen's voice echoed in her mind, a desperate plea that had splintered the fragile unity she clung to. She sunk against the ancient wall, the chill seeping through her cloak, mingling with the weight of betrayal. Outside, a night wind howled, carrying whispers of doubt. What had once been a sanctuary now felt like a tomb, each crumbling stone a reminder of the trust she had lost. Fennel's pulse quickened, the night heavy with the scent of moss and decay, her breath shallow as she grappled with the chaos inside her. Alone, the word echoed in the ruins, a promise and a threat. Fennel pressed her palms against the cool stone, grounding herself against the tumult of her thoughts. Betrayal clawed at her gut like a feral beast gnashing its teeth at her resolve. She had fought and bled for them, her supporters, her friends. But now, doubts whispered like ghosts in the corners of her mind. What if they were right? What if she was leading them all to ruin? The moonlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced mockingly on the walls. She rose, pacing the narrow perimeter of the ruins, each step a battle against her own crumbling faith. The wind picked up, rustling through the remnants of the past, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and the distant crackle of a fire. Fennel paused, staring into the darkness beyond the ruins. Her thoughts drifted to the faces of those who had once stood beside her, their trust now fractured. Could she reach out to those she had once deemed unworthy? The idea felt like a betrayal in itself, yet survival was a different beast altogether.
She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms, wrestling with the vulnerability that gnawed at her core. A flicker of light caught her eye, glinting off a piece of shattered glass embedded in the stone. It reminded her of the old council meetings, laughter echoing, plans woven together like the threads of a tapestry. Now the tapestry lay in tatters, but to gather the threads again meant risking her pride, opening the door to those she had turned away. Was unity worth the pain of vulnerability? Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the weight of the choice looming ahead. It was time to decide. Time to act. Fennel drew a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and unresolved tension. She turned back to the ruins, surveying the shadows that cloaked the remnants of the council. Reaching out to her former rival felt like stepping into the abyss, but perhaps it was the only way to emerge from this darkness. Her heart steadied. A truce. The thought settled in her mind, a fragile seedling pushing through the cracks in the stone. She stepped forward, determined, ready to confront the ghosts of her past. The clock was ticking, and she would not let it drown her.
Chapter 6. Echoes of the Ruins. The council ruins loomed before Fennel Jarek, shadows dancing over the time-worn stones, whispering of betrayals past. The air, humid and thick with the earthy scent of damp soil, mingled with the faint perfume of wildflowers, an odd juxtaposition that stirred memories of childhood afternoons spent sifting through her father's collection of artifacts. Sunlight filtered through the broken arches, casting fractured patterns that played tricks on her mind. Every footfall echoed with uncertainty, and she brushed her fingers against the cool stones as if seeking solace in their ancient presence. This place, steeped in history and regret, felt both familiar and foreign, a reminder of her past, a past that now demanded to be reclaimed. Fennel knelt beside the remains of a once grand pedestal, her heart racing as her fingers traced the edges of a hidden compartment. Dust motes swirled in the shafts of light, catching her eye, and she paused, her breath hitching. The scent of earth and decay wrapped around her, and for a fleeting moment she was back in her childhood home, the musty aroma of her father's study enveloping her. The thought tightened her chest. Focus. She pried the compartment open, revealing ancient scrolls, their edges frayed and yellowed with age. Each scroll was a whisper of power, a promise of knowledge that could shift the balance. Her hands trembled slightly, a nervous laugh escaping her lips as she clutched the scrolls tighter. What a cruel irony it was, to find hope in the ruins of despair. As she unfurled one scroll, the inked symbols danced before her, spilling secrets of their enemies, factions weakened by greed and betrayal. The words twisted in her mind, igniting a fire long buried beneath layers of doubt. This could change everything, she murmured to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. The thought of allies, of reclaiming not just artifacts, but her place in this world sent her heart racing, yet a shadow of doubt crept in. How could she trust anyone again? The memory of her collection lost in a heist, the betrayal that had shattered her world, loomed large in her mind. Would this be another false dawn? A rustle in the underbrush snapped her back to the present. She froze, instincts honed by years of solitude kicking in. "Hello," she called, her voice steady, though her fingers fidgeted with the scrolls. Silence answered, thick and oppressive. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes lingering in the shadows. "Show yourself if you dare." The challenge hung in the air, defiant yet laced with the anxiety that clawed at her insides. Was she ready to face whatever or whoever was lurking in the depths of the ruins? The rustling grew louder, and Fennel's heart raced as a figure stepped into the light, a cloaked silhouette, face obscured. "You seek knowledge, historian?" The voice was low, gravelly. Dusk draped the council ruins in a shroud of muted gold and deepening shadows, the crumbling stone walls standing sentinel against the encroaching night. Ancient carvings, weathered yet dignified, whispered stories of a civilization long vanished, their intricate designs softened by the caress of overgrown moss. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, mingled with the rustle of leaves, creating a symphony of nature's melancholy. Fennel stood in the central courtyard where the fading light flickered like a dying ember, casting elongated shadows that danced across her skin, the chill of the stone beneath her fingertips, grounding her in the present while memories swirled like ghosts around her. Each breath tasted of nostalgia, bittersweet and heavy, as she grappled with the weight of expectation and the uncertainty of the allies she had unearthed. The silence of the ruins wrapped around Fennel like a shroud, punctuated only by the occasional call of a distant bird, as if nature itself mourned the council's fall from grace.
Her gaze drifted over the surrounding archways, their once grand entrances now crumbling and choked with wild flora, hiding secrets of past meetings and betrayals. She felt the cool stone beneath her palm, a stark reminder of the power that once thrived here, and a shiver coursed down her spine. The past whispered in the rustling leaves, echoing warnings, doubts about her newfound allies clawing at the edges of her resolve. Each whisper a reminder of betrayal she could not shake off. As the last light of day surrendered to the encroaching dark, Fennel's heart raced, the urgency of her thoughts echoing in the hollow spaces of the courtyard. How could she trust those who had appeared like shadows in her hour of need? The weight of leadership pressed heavily on her shoulders, the taste of iron rising in her throat. A gust of wind swept through the ruins, tangling her hair and carrying with it the scent of jasmine, sweet yet laced with decay, a stark reminder of the beauty and fragility of trust. She could feel the tension thrumming in the air, a living thing, as if the very ruins were holding their breath, waiting for her next move. Just as clarity began to shimmer on the horizon of her thoughts, a figure emerged from the shadows, dark and indistinct against the backdrop of fading light. Fennel's pulse quickened, a mix of hope and dread flooding her senses. Was this ally or adversary? The figure moved closer, the sound of footsteps echoing against the stone, each step sending a ripple of apprehension through her core. She held her breath, the air thick with unspoken questions, and the weight of her past mistakes, the taste of desperation on her tongue. As the figure came into the dim light, Fennel's heart thundered in her chest, a wild drumbeat underscoring the charged atmosphere of the room.
Dawn crept over the whispering square, its light filtering through the heavy fog like a hesitant promise. Fennel Jarek stood at the edge of the cobblestones, shadows of the past lingering at her back. The echoes of betrayal clung to her like a shroud, yet the air crackled with an electric tension, a flicker of hope igniting within her. She scanned the square, her heart a metronome in the fragile quiet, each beat a reminder of the choices that lay ahead. Somewhere among the shifting shadows, the figure awaited her, a spectre of uncertainty. Time pressed down, each tick of the clock urging her forward into the unknown, where allies and enemies blurred in the gathering light. The figure emerged, wrapped in a cloak as dark as the secrets it concealed. Fennel's pulse quickened. "I'm here to negotiate," she declared, her voice steady against the rising sun. The figure tilted its head, an unreadable gesture. "Loyalty is not a currency easily spent." "Prove it," it replied, each word measured, a challenge dangling in the air. Fennel clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms. Trust was a fragile thread between them, and she could feel the weight of her past pushing against her like a storm, menacing and relentless. What could she offer? A low murmur rippled through the square, an undercurrent of expectation. Fennel squared her shoulders, stepping closer, shadows dancing at her feet. "I can gather information, disrupt their plans. You know I have access," she pressed, her breath a whisper among the whispers. The figure remained silent, a spectre of doubt. Each second stretched tension coiling tighter around them, until a rustle shattered the fragile moment. Fennel froze, her gaze snapping to the entrance of the square. Heart lurching, a group of rival faction members loomed, their laughter slicing through the dawn like a blade sharp and dangerous. The figure's visage hardened, and Fennel sensed the walls closing in. "You must decide quickly, Jarek. They'll smell your hesitation like blood in the water." She swallowed hard, the reality crashing over her like a wave. The rivals, confident and boisterous, were a reminder of her tangled alliances. Could she truly navigate this treacherous web without falling back into the abyss? Just as she opened her mouth to respond, the lead rival caught her eye, a smirk curling his lips. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet something deeper pulled her to stand her ground. Fennel's mind raced, tangled between the figure's challenge and the looming threat of betrayal that hung in the air. As the rivals approached, the ruins of the council loomed like ancient sentinels against the dusky sky, their weathered stones whispering secrets of the past. Fennel Jarek stood amidst the crumbling walls, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint tang of smoke from distant cooking fires. Shadows stretched long, mingling with the soft rustle of leaves as the sun dipped below the horizon. Around her, the remnants of what once was echoed with the weight of decisions unmade, and the deepening twilight felt like the breath of the vanished people, their legacy pressing against her chest.
Clutching a small piece of dried fish, she took a bite, the salty taste mingling with the bittersweet tension that hung heavy in the air. This was not merely a meal, it was a connection to the struggles of her people, a reminder of the bonds formed over shared sustenance. Fennel paused, swallowing the last morsel of fish as she considered the revelation of the hidden network. The flickering light of a nearby fire illuminated the faces of her companions, their features etched with uncertainty. She lowered her head slightly, acknowledging the presence of Elder Tolan, a man respected for his wisdom and age. His full title lingered unspoken in the air, an honorific weighty with expectation. The unease among them was palpable, like the oppressive humidity before a storm. "Do we trust them?" she finally murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, as she recalled the warnings against disturbing the ruins. The elder's gaze hardened, the vanishing echoes of the past felt more alive in this moment than ever before. "Trust is a fragile thing, Fennel. We tread on the edge of a blade here." The crackle of the fire punctuated the silence, and she reached for a cup of herbal tea, the warmth seeping into her palms. The rich aroma of chamomile and mint enveloped her, a fleeting comfort in the midst of chaos. Outside the ruins, a laborer called to another, their laughter echoing through the grove, as they loaded baskets of stewed roots from the nearby fields. Fennel's heart tightened at the sound. The common folk, with their simple joys, remained blissfully unaware of the web of deceit swirling around them. She took a sip, and the tea felt like a balm, yet her mind raced with the implications of their newfound allies. Would they stand with them when the time came? The shadows deepened, and a sudden rustle from the underbrush snapped her attention. Instinctively, she gripped the hilt of her dagger, the cool metal grounding her as she scanned the fading light. A figure emerged, cloaked and hooded, a silhouette against the twilight. Fennel's breath caught in her throat. She remembered the old tales warning against wandering the ruins at night, lest the spirits of the vanished grow restless. Yet curiosity pulled at her, and she stepped forward, her heart pounding. "What do you seek here?" she called out.
Morning light filtered through the tangled branches of the Whispering Square, casting dappled shadows on the cobblestones. Fennel Jarek stood near the edge of the square, the air thick with the scent of dried fish sizzling on a nearby vendor's fire. She clutched a small pouch of foraged berries, their sweetness a fleeting comfort against her anxiety. Around her, the square hummed with life. Market traders shouted their wares, children darted between legs, and the occasional herbalist set up shop, their tables adorned with vibrant bundles of dried roots. It was a place alive with the echoes of history, where every whisper seemed to carry the weight of the vanished people's legacy, and today Fennel felt that weight pressing down on her like a storm cloud ready to burst. Fennel leaned closer to the shadowy figure cloaked in muted earth tones, her heart racing as she caught a glimpse of his piercing gaze. "I need your help. The network of allies is critical, and I can prove my loyalty. Just a word from you, and I'll—" She paused, a flicker of doubt crossing her mind. Would he really take her at her word? The man's brow furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line as he studied her. She lowered her head slightly, a gesture of respect, hoping to coax a hint of trust from him. A nearby vendor shouted, offering a handful of berries for a mere coin, the sweet scent teasing her senses, but she couldn't afford the distraction now. The shadowy figure's fingers drummed against the hilt of a dagger concealed beneath his cloak. "Prove it then! Show me you're not just another pawn in this game of shadows!" Fennel swallowed hard, weighing her options. She had heard whispers of the vanished people's wrath, their spirits watching over the living, and she felt a shiver crawl up her spine. "I swear by Eldron, the Whispering Shade, that I seek only to protect our interests." The name of the god slipped from her lips like an echo in the wind, but the man remained unmoved, skepticism etched in the lines of his face. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, tension coiling tightly as a group of rival faction members burst into the square. Their laughter echoed sinisterly, cutting through the morning chatter like a blade. Fennel's heart raced as she spotted the glint of weapons at their sides. The shadowy figure turned sharply, his gaze flicking back to her, a silent acknowledgement of their shared peril. She glanced at the vendor who had just finished wrapping a piece of smoked meat, the aroma rich and inviting, but now it felt like a distant memory. "You've wasted enough time," he muttered, stepping back into the crowd. Fennel reached out, but he melted away, slipping into the throng as easily as a shadow at dusk. Panic swelled within her as the rival... Chapter 7. Echoes of Dawn. The Whispering Square lay before Fennel, a cracked expanse of cobblestones glistening with the morning dew, each uneven surface a testament to the tumultuous past. Shadows stretched long from the crumbling stone pillars that flank the square, their ancient forms looming like silent sentinels. The air hummed with a charged energy, a blend of damp earth and the lingering acrid smoke of past fires, evoking both nostalgia and foreboding. Murmurs rippled through the gathering crowd, a mix of hope and tension that clung to Fennel's skin like the cool breeze swirling around her, brushing against her cheeks. Today, this place would either awaken the spirit of unity or plunge them deeper into chaos. Fennel stepped forward, her heart a drumbeat in her chest, echoing the sounds of shifting feet and anxious whispers. The crowd swelled, faces painted with a kaleidoscope of emotions, some eager, others wary. The wind rustled through the faded murals on the walls, carrying with it the ghostly whispers of those who had once gathered here, their stories etched in the very stones beneath her worn boots. She inhaled deeply, the metallic tang of tension mixing with the earthy scent of damp stone, grounding her even as uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. "We cannot allow the collector's grip to tighten any further." Her voice rang out, a beacon amidst the chaos, but it was met with a cascade of boos and jeers, sharp enough to cut through her courage. As the words left her mouth, Fennel felt the rough cobblestones shift beneath her feet, a reminder of the instability that lay not only in the ground, but within the hearts surrounding her. The shadows danced as the central fire pit flickered ominously, its embers casting a warm glow that seemed to mock the chill in the air. Faces turned from eager anticipation to fierce scorn, and she caught the eye of a loyalist. His sneer, a promise of violence. She swallowed hard, tasting the bitterness of fear, and pressed on. Together we can forge a new path. We can rebuild our future. But the loyalists were relentless, their voices rising like a tide, drowning her out. The rustling of fabric echoed the unrest, the crowd shifting like a living thing, a breath away from chaos. Fennel's heart raced, pounding against her ribs as she glanced at the scattered remnants of makeshift barricades, symbols of past defiance now standing as ominous reminders of what could come. "You threaten the only stability we have," a voice shouted from the back, and the crowd reacted, tension coiling tighter, crackling like the dry leaves underfoot. The air thickened, every heartbeat a countdown to an inevitable clash. Fennel's voice faltered, her conviction wavering under the weight of their hostility. The cool dusk descended on Whispering Square, the shadows creeping into the hearts of those gathered. Fennel Jarek stood at the centre, the weight of her past failures pressing against her chest like a stone. 3 days remained before the reckoning. If she didn't relinquish her claim to power by the week's end, the consequences would be irreversible. The community's future hung in the balance, and she was ready to unveil her truth, to finally acknowledge her mistakes, and offer the power to the people. But the crowd's skepticism wrapped around her like a noose, threatening to tighten with every heartbeat. Fear flickered in their eyes, and Fennel's resolve wavered. Would they accept her? Would they trust her? Fennel's voice trembled as she stepped forward, the murmurs of doubt rippling through the crowd like a storm gathering strength. "I stand here not as a ruler, but as a penitent. I have failed you, and the time has come to acknowledge that failure. I'm here to give up my claim to power, and propose a council that empowers all of you." Her heart raced, each thud echoing the ticking clock in her mind. Intensity washed over her as she caught sight of familiar faces twisted in skepticism. "You think I'm here for my own gain? That I wish to manipulate you with sweet words?" A man in the front shouted, his voice sharp as glass. "What proof do we have you won't do it again?" She swallowed hard, the taste of copper returning, a reminder of her own fragility. "I have lost everything that mattered to me, my family, my friends, my honor. I can't go back to the life I once had. All I ask is for a chance to rebuild with you, to create something better together." The crowd shifted, a wave of doubt still crashing against her desperate plea. Would her honesty be enough? The clock ticked louder in her ears, each second counting down to her potential ruin. Sweat trickled down her back, and she fought the urge to flee, but she couldn't. Not now, not when everything depended on this moment. A silence fell, heavy and thick, as Fennel drew in a shaky breath, feeling the weight of the stairs upon her. "By the end of this week, if I fail to prove my sincerity, I will accept the loss of my reputation, and this community will suffer the consequences of my denial. I'm asking you to be part of this change, to join me in shaping a council that truly represents us all." As she spoke, faces began to soften, doubt giving way to the first hints of hope. "What if we can trust you, Fennel?
"What if this time it's different?" someone called out, and in that moment she felt a flicker of connection amid the uncertainty. The tension hung like a thick fog, but Fennel pressed on, her heart pounding against her ribcage. "Together we can rewrite our story, but I need your help. I need you to believe that change is possible." The crowd began to shift, whispers of agreement floating through the air. But just as hope began to ignite, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man she never.
Dusk draped the council ruins in a tapestry of muted colors. The last rays of sunlight filtering through the crumbling archways, casting elongated shadows across the sunlit courtyard. Fennel stood at the raised platform, the cool, worn stone pressing against her palms as she gripped its edge, grounding herself in the moment. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, a bittersweet reminder of the vibrancy that once filled this place. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, whispering secrets that danced just beyond her grasp, while the distant call of birds echoed like ghosts from a vanished culture, haunting yet beautiful. Fennel's voice wavered as she began to speak, the words slipping from her lips like shadows slipping into night. "I stand before you, not as your leader, but as a woman who has faltered, who has made choices that have brought pain and suffering." The crowd shifted, a wave of skepticism rippling through their ranks, their eyes reflecting the fading light and lingering doubt. She paused, feeling the weight of their gaze, the cool stone beneath her fingertips grounding her against the rising tide of anxiety. "I can't change the past, but I can offer a vision for our future, a counsel born from the ashes of this ruin, one where every voice matters." As she spoke, the overgrown flora around her swayed gently in response to her plea, the earthy scent mingling with the floral notes of wildflowers, evoking memories of better times. The ancient carvings lining the walls seemed to lean closer, as if straining to hear her words, their intricate stories etched in stone whispering of a civilization that once thrived. Fennel swallowed hard, her throat dry from the weight of her confession. The air felt charged, thick with unspoken tension, and she could sense the crowd's collective breath held in anticipation of her next words. "What we build together can heal this fractured community. We must rise, not just from the rubble of our past, but from the ashes of our mistakes." The murmurs of the crowd rose and fell like the distant tide, their skepticism battling with the flickers of hope igniting within their hearts. Fennel's pulse quickened, the echo of her racing heart pounding in her ears, drowning out the rustling leaves. She caught glimpses of faces, some hardened with distrust, others softened by a glimmer of belief. "Together we can reclaim the council ruins and transform this place into a beacon of unity." Her voice rang clear, powerful against the backdrop of the dying light, the shadows deepening around her like a shroud. As the last rays of sunlight surrendered to the encroaching night, Fennel's heart swelled with a fragile hope, mingled with the weight of her past. The air cooled, wrapping around her like a tender embrace. The sun dipped low over the whispering square, casting long shadows that swallowed Fennel Jarek whole. She stood on the makeshift stage, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and lingering wild flowers, her heart pounding like a war drum. Any moment now, she would have to confront the community she had let down so many times. The weight of their skepticism felt like chains around her ankles, but she had only until the end of the week to redeem herself. Failure meant accepting a loss so profound it could shatter her chance at power, an end she wasn't prepared to face. This was her moment. She could no longer hide behind her past mistakes. She inhaled deeply, forcing herself to remember why she was here. She needed to propose a new council, a chance to give the power back to the people, and she needed to do it now. Fennel's voice trembled as she began to speak, but the murmurs in the crowd grew louder, a cacophony of doubt that clawed at her resolve. They shifted, arms crossed, faces twisted into expressions of skepticism that felt like daggers aimed straight at her heart. "You think you can lead us?" someone shouted. The question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. She swallowed hard, the taste of bile rising in her throat. What if they rejected her? She couldn't bear the thought of failure. By dawn it would be too late to turn back. She had to press on, even as her mind screamed for her to flee. No, not again, not this time. Fennel took another deep breath, her chest tight with anxiety. The shadows of the council ruins loomed behind her, a constant reminder of her failures. Every mistake she had made in the past echoed in her mind, amplifying the fear that clawed at her throat,
But she could not falter now. She stepped closer to the edge of the stage, her heart racing. "I know I've let you all down, but I need you to listen to me." Her voice rose above the noise, desperation threading through each word. The clock was ticking 3 days until the council gathered again, and if she didn't convince them by then, the chance to rebuild trust would vanish, leaving her with nothing but the bitter taste of regret. Finally, a flicker of attention sparked within the crowd, their eyes narrowing as they began to listen. Fennel seized the moment, her pulse quickening. "We can create a council together, a real council that puts power back in your hands." She could feel their skepticism waver, but doubt lingered like a spectre waiting to pounce. A few voices began to cheer, but would it be enough? The time was running out, and the pressure bore down on her like a suffocating weight, her breaths coming in shallow gasps as she fought to maintain her composure.
The whispering square thrummed with a tension thicker than the damp air, the metallic tang of fear swirling in the breeze. Fennel Jarek stood at the centre, the cobblestones rough beneath her feet, grounding her against the tremors of doubt. The whispers rose and fell like waves crashing upon a rocky shore, each voice carrying remnants of distrust, memories of past failures. She inhaled, the scent of damp stone pulling her back to the musty archives where she once roamed, treasures of history nestled in dark corners, now ghosts of her aspirations. Fennel's fingers brushed the worn pages of her notebook, the familiar texture soothing yet electrifying, reminding her of the stories she had once woven, stories that now felt like chains binding her to a past she could no longer embrace. Fennel's heart raced as she scanned the crowd, their eyes like knives, sharp and unyielding. She gulped, suppressing a nervous laugh that threatened to escape. I stand before you not as a leader, but as someone who has failed you all. The weight of my mistakes has burdened me long enough, and I can no longer carry this alone." Her voice wavered, the formality she prided herself on cracking under the weight of vulnerability. Each pause felt like a chasm, the silence stretching as she contemplated the gravity of her words. Would they listen? Would they believe her? The air crackled with anticipation, a chorus of whispers rising and falling in sync with her heartbeat. Fennel took a step forward, feeling the rough cobblestones shift beneath her, a reminder of the precariousness of her position. "I once believed that artifacts would validate my worth. I romanticized every piece, every story, as if they could stitch together the gaping holes of my inadequacies. But now I see that my obsession only led to isolation and loss." Her breath caught, a memory of the heist flickering through her mind like a bad dream, the scent of smoke and betrayal clawing at her throat. She clutched her notebook tighter, the familiar weight offering a strange comfort amid the chaos. "I propose we form a council, a group to share the burdens of leadership, to empower each other. Together we can rebuild what was lost. I cannot do this alone any longer, and I do not wish to. We must unite to heal our wounds, to forge a future together." Her words hung in the air, trembling with the hope of redemption, but the crowd remained largely unmoved. She swallowed hard, a sharp taste of copper in her mouth. Would they see the sincerity in her proposal, or was it merely another empty promise? Fennel caught the scent of something familiar, a whiff of aged parchment, mingled with the damp earth, like the archives where she had spent countless hours lost in the past.